Welcome to the Real Life Podcast at Hermitage Hills, where we have real honest conversations with real people about topics relevant for today. At Hermitage Hills, we desire to see people experience life change through Jesus Christ. For more information about our church and how you can be a part of the community here, visit hermitagehills.com/connect.
All right, so I think I know the answer to this question.
Okay.
But do you ever feel overwhelmed?
Yeah.
I bet you do. What do you do with that?
Yeah, I think.
How do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a toughie, but practicals. I think I've been learning more and more that in our Christian walk, we have to be more practical, and like you would laugh, but this is exactly what I do. I turn on the phone, or I put on music on the screen, and I grab one of my sons, who's the life of the party, and I'm like, let's have a dance off. Like, let's do this right now, because I can't take it, or I'll like separate myself physically and just go to the bathroom and lock myself in there, or like go upstairs and be like, guys, I need 5 minutes. Like, right. I need to take 5 minutes, right. or I'll just go to the kitchen and actually like take some time and worship. Like, it sounds so, I guess, I don't know how it sounds to people. Maybe it sounds too like whatever. You don't actually do that, but that's actually what I do. Like that's literally what I do. Yeah. And I've found myself like throwing myself physically on the floor and just crying out to the Lord and say, I need you.
Yeah.
And just soaking it and letting it drip.
This is too much right now.
Yeah. And one of the beauties that I found in homeschooling is the vulnerability that we have with our children. So, I mean, my kids have seen me cry. My kids have seen me angry. My kids have seen me like lift up my voice. Like, they've seen all of that.
Right.
They've seen me have so much joy and pleasure. Like, they've seen all of those aspects. And so it's really cool when I see like some of them step up and say, Mom, don't do that. Let me take care of this. Right.
Yeah.
And or like compassion, right. Of saying like mercy, saying, man, Mom has done this all day, guys, chill out, and so those moments just help me when I'm feeling overwhelmed to like just take myself out of the situation. Like, there's been times when I've had Caesar come down and be like, chill out. Yeah. And I'm like, ugh, I just need a break, and him physically saying. I'm
sure you do.
Yeah. And him physically saying, here are the keys.
Right.
Go
to Sonic.
Right.
Get a Blizzard.
And I'm a creative, so literally I'll just go out and just go look at pretty things and just come back and feel like so much relief, of that's just cool. Like I need that,
That's good.
And so I think that's the beauty of and going. I forgot to mention just one of the hugest thing is that we do it as a family. So I am the one who's physically there on a regular basis, but Caesar was there in the younger elementary years. Caesar was their math teacher.
Okay.
And their history teacher.
Uh-huh.
And so he set them up for me for where they are right now. And so it's a family affair. So It's all hands on deck. Yeah.
So tell me this, because another side of the overwhelm, I would think, is as they get older. You have a 15-year-old, he's getting into subjects. Yeah. I have a doctorate degree, but I would still be very uncomfortable with calculus and trigonometry and those things. I'm going like, what am I going to do with that? Right. How do you handle that as a homeschool mom when you're looking at those older years and those subjects that maybe you're going, I may not be my expertise.
I think one of the beauties of the age that we live in is technology. We have so many wonderful applications, so many programs that are useful and wonderful. One of the major reasons why, obviously, like we moved to Nashville for a specific task. God brought us here because of Caesar's, like job and what he was going to do. But then we realized really quickly that when we came here, God provided this is Mecca of homeschool. And so we were surrounded with like people pray in Chick-fil-A, it was just beautiful. And so part of that also what helped is, technology helps. And really like I've noticed, it makes me go back and refresh. And then in the times where I get stuck, the beauty is that like I said, when God brought us here, we were like, oh, what are we going to do? But he set us up in a place that has, our tutorial house, our co-op and tutorial house that has both the elementary and the high school aspect.
Right.
And so when we came, everybody was in the elementary because I had no high schoolers then.
Right.
And so it was beautiful because, during those years, when I was just like, this history stuff is killing me.
Right.
There was help there, or there was
at the co-op,
and
now tell folks what a co-op is in case if they don't know.
Right. Okay. So basically what it is, it's a collaboration of families that homeschool, and we gather together, and what happens is that you build a school essentially, depending on however many days you're going to gather. In our case, it's one day. And so basically, like, there's a group of ladies that come and build and set it up all as if it were a school. And so everybody, all the moms take responsibility for teaching for a certain semester, certain classes. If you're teaching high schoolers, you have to have a degree in the area that you're going to be teaching.
Okay.
And so you teach as though you were teaching at a regular school.
Right.
But really you're looked as a private tutor.
Right.
In that matter.
Yeah.
And then so they go back.
Well, someone who knows what they're doing.
Exactly.
Everybody shows their expertise.
Exactly.
Excellent.
Yeah. And so that's the beauty of it. And so we're all coming together, forming this thing all together, all the moms, all the families, hands on deck. And then at the end of the day, everything gets broken down.
Sounds like socialization is happening there.
Right? Yeah. And so that's helped me out so much.
That's awesome.
Having that. Yeah.
So what, when you think about it, for maybe some folks who may be listening or watching the podcast who are thinking about homeschooling, what words of encouragement would you want to share with them about things they would need to think about, pray through as they're looking at stepping into something that may be a little intimidating?
Right. I think the first thing is really, as a couple, I think pray about the decision that you're going to make. And obviously there's things that are going to have to be let go of. Priorities shift. So really ask the Lord to highlight what are those things that I'm going to have to let go of, and be willing to endure the process, and the mourning of those things, right? And then I would also say the best advice that I received from other missionary friends that were in inner city Chicago, which at the time there wasn't a co-op tutorial in the inner city of Chicago when we were homeschooling. So everything was kind of like you had to drive 45 minutes, to a co-op or whatever. And so that wasn't going to happen, not in the city. And so thankfully we were in a community where there were like 3 or 4 of us that were homeschooling. And one of the best advices I got from a missionary couple that were living in Little India in urban Chicago, teaching their kids, they were from Michigan, teaching their kids Urdu to evangelize to the Muslim community. He said to me, and both of them were educators, and they homeschooled their kids, and they said, you have to unschool your brain. And I was like,
what does that mean?
Exactly. And I said, tell me what that means. And he says, you have been educated in a certain way. You went to school, right? You prepared yourself. And so what you did in school is not what you do in homeschool. You're free. And so I didn't get that until I came here, and now my kids are older, where I'm like, what? Like, he's like, you're free. Like, you don't have to be rigid like that.
Right.
You don't have a time crunch.
Right.
You don't have to meet a certain, you can stay longer. You can linger in math a little bit longer. You can linger in reading a little bit longer.
Well, especially for each child.
Exactly.
Weakness, strengths.
Not that you omit a subject, right? I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is you don't have the pressure to work 8 hours, right? You can actually take this chapter and eat it bit by bit, and process it and be creative and do all these sorts of things. He's like, you can take them on a nature walk. You can do that's science and all of those things. I was just like, oh, And I would say to whoever's thinking of homeschooling that feels kind of like the pressure of all of that, like not to. Like part of the beauty is the fact that you can create an environment of learning that's adequate for your own kids.
Well, and everybody learns a little differently, right? There's auditory learners, there's visual learners, there's kinetic learners, touch and feel.
Exactly.
And so you can understand your child, what's the best way they learn, and then do a little bit for all, but help them where they can get it the best.
Right.
And in public school or private school,
right,
those are limited.
Right.
Because you're freed.
Yes.
Absolutely. That's beautiful.
And then you have a like curriculum galore,
right.
So you don't have to be married to a certain curriculum just because everybody else is.
Right. And I'm thinking the internet's got all kinds of information and creative things to do. So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What requirements does a homeschool parent have to walk through as far as what the government would want, certifications? Right. I don't even understand what that is. Right. There's testing. I'm sure there's testing kind of thing so they can get, and if they go to college or whatever, what's that required?
I think the main thing you have to do is each state requires certain things. And so some states are more lax on certain things. Some states are more rigid on certain things, require a certain amount of hours that you have to educate and do certain way.
Okay.
And so my suggestion would be to go online and to look at what the requirements are for your state, wherever you're in. And so, in Chicago, like you weren't required to be a part of a school. Like you can just homeschool. And you just had to make sure that you were required to teach the major subjects and make sure that you had all your information saved, for when you had to, present your kids' information for when they were getting ready to either go into high school or go into college. And the same is for Tennessee. Tennessee requires a certain amount of hours, certain subjects that you have to fulfill, and then you have to, be under an umbrella or be covered by an institution that is accredited so that they can validate that you are, in fact, the teacher and that you are teaching your students.
And who do you do that with?
I do that with Hermitage Christian Academy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Was another thought there. So have you ever come across, I don't know, if you don't know, that's fine, because this wasn't a question I prepped you on, but has there ever been a study or percentages of homeschool kids when they graduate versus public school kids or private kids when they graduate, as far as testing and how one does versus the other? Have you ever seen anything like that?
I have not currently. Okay. But one of the reasons why we were so enthralled by the idea of homeschooling and a concept called like autodidacto, which is an individual-based learning, like where they do it themselves, is because we were introduced to that by a couple that were missionaries in Israel. And there's this program where there was like older kids with younger kids interacting, and it was interest-based. So really it was your son walked in and they were interested in science, and there was kids of all ages, and they all like started tinkering and figuring it out, and bam, they come up with this amazing thing. And so we kind of got into that as well, where basically I would lay down Cehis Khan books or like whale books or whatever all over the house. Like we had little piles of books everywhere and history DVDs, and we would sit down and that would be our fun for the day, right? During lunchtime we would watch like science, Sid the Science Kid, or I don't know, anything, as something that would introduce us to topics and things like that we could talk about. And so then they became exposed to all these things. And so what I'm noticing now is with high schoolers that are homeschooled is that their ability to adapt and their ability to like explore, because they don't have restriction and think and problem solve, solve, because most of the time that's what you lack. It's kind of like you have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as where now I see students are like they're processing and that process, they're problem solving things and all of those things that you kind of lose in this aspect. I'm not I'm not saying one is better than the other. All I'm saying is from my side, right? What I see as a plus for them.
Right.
And obviously there's loopholes and there's things that you can see, but what I see in its majority is the ability to express themselves, the ability to process things and thoughts and ideas, and challenges. I think you said, that, when you're homeschooled, you don't bubble, but you expose in a safe environment, right? Yeah. So you do talk about evolution, and you talk about evolution in a way where these are the facts that they're presenting, and I pose the question to them: how are you going to justify your faith? Like, how are you going? What does that say to you? Like, what are you going to say? And I'm like, you can't say the Bible says. Yeah. Like you have to know.
Evolution has a thing called the missing link. Pretty important. There's a link missing in the theory of it. So anyway, we won't go there.
No.
So let me kind of wind this up with this thought. Yeah. So you've made reference to faith. You made reference to your Christian school, Christian upbringing, that kind of thing. So I'd love to just take a moment for you to share. How did you become, or how did you walk into having a relationship with Jesus? Right. And I'm even, I want to frame it that way because there's so much confusion today about religion and denominations and labels and titles, and even the word Christian is becoming confusing in our culture today. So, I know you have a great love for Christ and His church. Yeah. Tell me your story a little bit about how you came to be a follower of Jesus.
Yeah. Well, as I remember, I was born and there was church. Right. There was never me without being in church. Right. I remember being 5 years old, and I know that I'm the exception. I would say I was the exception. At 5 years old, I remember we were in home church, and I remember that the pastor at the time said, who really feels the inclination that God is calling you, really speaking to you, that you need to be saved. And I remember sitting down and listening to that, and I remember that my hand, I don't know how to explain it to you. I can't. I just remember, and I will cry, but I remember that I felt like something just naturally pushed my hand up, and I prayed. And I got baptized in the tub because it was freezing cold in Chicago. And I remember, I'm vivid. I remember exactly all the process and the whole thing. I remember that decision. And I remember at 9 years old then kind of asking myself the question, so what have I done? Right. So am I really a Christian? Because I'm still disobedient. I don't listen, I don't do this, I don't do that.
You're a kid.
Right. But I always had a love for being in church. I loved it. I loved hearing the music. I loved being in that environment. I just loved it. I would go with my grandmother and intercede with her with her friends, and it didn't bother me. I loved being in that environment. At 16, I remember vividly in a talk with the teacher was talking and was speaking, and I just remember that I almost felt like everything shut down, and I opened up my Bible and I wrote down June 14th, and I said, this is the day. I know I raised my hand when I was 5, right? But right now, you have me.
You drove the stake.
I did. Yeah. I said, this is it. You have me. Yeah. And I'll never forget that. That was the mark. I didn't know what life was going to look like. But I knew that I couldn't live any other way. All my life, that was how it's been. There was always a yanking of do this. And I was like, oh, I'm not doing that. And not fully understanding, not a consciousness. And I think at 16, that consciousness, that thing kind of just settled in my heart. This is me. And I'm okay with this. And as an adult, I think just the opportunity that I had to do urban missions from 16 on helped me love God and love His people. One of the things that I will never forget was she was I don't know why she chose me, but she did. Heather, she was like 70 years old, and she said, Syndi, you're going to come with me, and we're going to go witness, we're going to go evangelize in the subway. I was like, I'm not going to do that. I'll sing in church. I'll pray in church. I'm going to do that.
Right.
And so she said yes. And I said, And so I wouldn't answer her calls, and I was like, I want to do that, God, I want to do that. But anyway, we went downtown. I got my performance permit to be outside.
Okay.
She had one of those grocery carts packed with a keyboard, a little speaker, and some microphones. She got our team together. I was the youngest in the team, and there was
how old were you then?
I was maybe 20 years old, something like that. And we went downtown in the subway, and she explained to me. She said, you have 10 seconds between trains, so you need to make sure that you're ready to sing out and worship the Lord. I'm going to walk around, and I'm going to be praying for people along with these other ladies, and you're going to be singing out the scripture. And I said, oh, no. And granted, at the time, the way I had learned to play keyboard was just by watching. So I'm not a,
right.
I'm not a pianist by any means. I just knew chords. And she said, that's more than enough. We don't need any more. And that's exactly what I did.
That's awesome.
And so that was just the breaking down of fear, and experiences like that and more, pushed me and compelled me to learn to love God and love His people. And so that's kind of, and it's been messy. I haven't done it perfect, but that's where my heartbeat is. My heartbeat really is. I know that I don't deserve what I got. And I know that it wasn't me that got it.
Right.
And so I know that I didn't raise my hand. I know that. And so for that reason is why I'm. Well,
that goes with how God calls people to Himself.
Exactly.
God brings people to Himself.
Exactly.
It's a work of God in people's lives. And, prayerfully, as we're having this conversation, some folks who may be listening or watching, man, we just want to encourage you today. Yeah. If you're sensing that and God is moving in your life and moving in your spirit and your heart right now, and you sense that He's calling you to Himself, man, Syndi and I would both say, man, just surrender to that.
Amen.
Best step you can ever make in trusting incredible grace and mercy that God gives to us in the person of Jesus Christ. Amen. And there's so much in life and stories. This is homeschooling, which is one portion,
right?
Pretty big portion of your life, but there's so much other things that maybe later we could have other podcasts and talk about. But thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. This
Appreciate
is awesome.
That.
I love it.
And listen, glad you're with us on the Real Life Podcast. I think you heard real story, real life, real people making real impact. So maybe you have any questions, don't forget, you can call us or email us, and we'd love to connect with you. So, hey, have a great day, and God bless.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Real Life, a ministry of Hermitage Hills. If you'd like to be a part of a community seeking to follow Jesus and experience life change, visit us at hermitagehills.com/connect. You'll also find ways to ask for prayer and how to take the next steps in your faith journey. We'd love to partner with you as you grow in your faith and experience real life.